A solo business trip vlog. Today we're test driving a pure electric submodel. This car has just been launched and the price has been released. From a cost performance perspective, it should be extremely attractive. So what car is it? It's the one behind me, this EV Marvel S5. I remember not long ago I once said that currently on the market, if you want pure electric model to sell well, whether it's a sedan and sub or any other type of car, the price must be cheap. Why is that? There are three reasons. First, for manufacturers, low-cost cars may only be able to further share some of the development and manufacturing costs when they sell in large quantities. And manufacturing costs when they sell in large quantities, this includes many. Second, for consumers, cheap, pure electric models are currently the only ones that those who are very concerned about residual value will lose the least on. In the end, third, cheap pure electric models don't cause so much anxiety during daily use. So this has led to the current market having a group of cars with 100,000 yuan as a benchmark for car manufacturing and products developed and sold to consumers. So the one behind me from Marvel NGS5 is such a product. Then some people might say, can cheap things be good? Well, cheap things can actually be good. We just drove this car briefly, and what's my biggest feeling? It's that the maturity is very high. SAIC Group is also an old car manufacturer in the history of China's entire automobile industry, especially entering the new world, whether in terms of independent brands or joint ventures. They have done quite well over the years. They have formed a very systematic and effective methodology and experience value for car manufacturing. Finally, when these things are put together and applied to a cheap car, it will produce a particularly good chemical reaction. Why do I say that? It's because mature large manufacturers building cars, although they won't be particularly outstanding, they basically won't make low-level mistakes. What are some low-level mistakes? They are things that happen when you don't have experience in car manufacturing. You might think things are very good, but in practice, there will be some strange things that are reflected in the fact that consumers are not very satisfied and the added value of the entire product is reduced. This car basically, as soon as you sit in it, it's a normal car. Why is that? First of all, when we get into a car, let's first look at this position next to us. The biggest requirements for door panels. Now, besides the door handle being in the right place and easy to use when opening and closing the door, besides the door handle being in the right place and easy to use when opening and closing the door, in a place that is visible to the naked eye, the first thing you should see is the physical lock and unlock buttons. Don't skimp on all four window buttons. Don't do anything weird. And what else? And there's this child lock, mainly for locking the windows. The physical lock is in another place for people of the new century. A place to put a phone is essential, so it has a single slot where you can just put a phone. The mature points and some places with good materials are also reflected in this door panel. This is soft. The sugar-based material inside the filling is relatively high in resilience. This also feels like leather. This one is even softer. The filling inside is more fluffy, making the softness you feel when you touch it higher and thicker. Then you turn your gaze and you can see the position of our dashboard. This place also uses sugar-based material. This place, although it feels like plastic to the touch, it has actually been wrapped. And then the steering wheel is even more so. The steering wheel, actually, for most consumers, there are several main functions to use. The first is listening to music. We like to increase or decrease the volume and skip songs. Usually pressing it once is the mute button. That's right, you see it's muted. Press this again to cancel the mute. There should be a prompt. If you don't have a prompt, you can display text. These are all possible. And on the left, what everyone is generally familiar with now is some intelligent value-added assistance related features, including being able to set a custom button and then use some other related buttons. For example, this is the 360 and what happens when you press the custom button. I found that its energy recovery very good with voice control. Let's try it out. Open the sunroof. Very nice. After turning it over, we see some other related functions. This especially goes up with several joint venture manufacturers. Years of cooperation have led to some shared keys that look very familiar at a glance. The sunroof that can be opened besides voice control. It's best To also have physical buttons, we feel that cars with physical buttons now are really very rare and also very likable. Why is that? Because I really don't want to use any buttons or other ways to control it. Using my hand to operate it is definitely a kind of enjoyment and experience. This texture is a kind of classical beauty. I just learned a new word a couple of days ago. Using physical buttons in a car is a kind of classical beauty. There are also some small details about using the car that if you haven't owned several cars, you probably wouldn't be able to experience. For example, the place where we put cups, if there is a soft grid inside it, can show that it is very adaptable to the bottles that can be put in. Small ones can be held in place. Then secondly is the position of the center armrest. Let's see if there is a 20-volt power supply inside. There is, and there are also two Type A ports, one for data cable, one can be used for charging, and then there's this place. This glove box can be said to be a test of EQ for many big manufacturers. How do you say that? Let's listen to this sound, and the action after it opens. And the damping Xinyin cars give it a rope, and it just falls out. If you put a little effort into it, you'll get a little something. And then let's touch the inside, see if there's any flocking, although there is no flocking, but the overall workmanship is very smooth. After seeing the front, do you think this car is okay? And it looks familiar. That's right, I just said they used a lot of spare parts that they have been using with their partners for a long time, which can also help this car to lower the price, right? And these are all mature products. No need to worry about quality or any problems with the workmanship, and no need to reopen the mold otherwise. How could it be so cheap? And then let's take a look at the back. Just now we talked about the child lock. There is a window lock in the front, where is the physical lock in the back. On the door side, after moving it down like this, the children won't be able to open the door from the inside. Look, now there is no response. Now there is no response. Some people will say, "Teacher, why are you introducing this? We all know you know it means you are already an advanced car user." But many people don't know. Coming to the back, we see some familiar things, including the bag for inserting a phone. This is also from the inspiration of partners. They directly used it on this car. Let's see if the cup holder in the center armrest is familiar. It's also very familiar. They are all mature products. And they also have this rubber. See, this is what I just said. With this thing, it can ensure that the big ones can be inserted and can be held in place, and you don't have to worry about the small ones shaking around. It's a configuration that looks inconspicuous, but has very good function and usability. There's not much in the back. This car that costs around 100,000 yuan can give an independent rear air outlet and a Type A charging port that's already quite impressive for today's test drive. The manufacturer is very considerate. They gave us a doll. I don't know the purpose of this doll. Is it because they are afraid that I will be lonely testing the car by myself? Let's take a look at the overall riding space experience. It should be said that this car, from a visual point of view, oh, sorry, I plugged it in wrong. You can feel that its entire design should have used a lot of experience. When we say mature car media, how do they test cars? You can roughly guess it at a glance. Whether the rear seats of this car are comfortable and what the angle is. Let's go take a look from over there. Let's talk about some details. Look, these rubber strips on the door side. This one is inclusive, and it's this kind of a shape. Then after a long time, this place won't make noise when rubbing against the car body. And with an extra layer of rubber strip plus the sealing inside it can make the entire car's nev very good. They are really afraid that I will starve to death. They gave me so many snacks. Isofix child seat interface. You must recognize this. There isn't one at home. It absolutely must have this. Without this, there's no place to put the child's car seat. What about the whole seat? You can see that it can be directly separated. Is this a 3-part or 4-part separation? It doesn't matter. It's good that it can be separated, and after being separated and folded down, the state of the entire seat is still relatively flat. So it can form a very large effective extension area for the trunk for friends who might need to move things around daily. This is good news. Under normal circumstances, we generally show the length of the rear seat cushion, but visually, this length is already sufficient. How should I put it? This seat cushion length under normal circumstances, as long as it exceeds 38 centimeters, it can provide most people with very comfortable leg support. Why is that? Because if it's too short, it won't reach between the thigh and the calf, the back of the joint bend. In that case, your legs will dangle uncomfortably. Another necessary and powerful factor that allows the legs to hang down is the distance from the top of this to the floor platform. This distance, under normal circumstances, exceeding 30 centimeters would be very good data visually. This place definitely exceeds 30. Secondly, there's the angle of the seat. The lowest point of the angle gives the whole person a feeling of relaxation. Another point is that it can also effectively steal some headroom. Why is that? If your butt goes down, doesn't your head also go down? Let's measure the angle of its seat cushion. Okay, very exaggerated, 20 degrees. 20 degrees. I didn't expect it to actually be 20 degrees. This angle is quite impressive. It must be inherited from the German system. Let's take a look at the angle of the backrest. What is the golden angle for the backrest angle? The golden angle is about 20 to 23 degrees. It's a backrest angle that makes you feel comfortable if this value is not reached. More or less, your back will be a bit tired after sitting for a long time because your long support is all on your waist. It doesn't reach your back. Let's take a look at the back. Let's look at the angle of the back. Hey, golden angle, the basic angle is about 20. After you lean on it and apply a little pressure, it's about 21, not up to 23. A certain brand previously promoted that their golden angle was 23. After looking at these data, everyone probably has a good idea. It shouldn't be uncomfortable to sit in this car. Secondly, there's the trunk space. This is also among the family cars. For the common people, a very important piece of data. To be honest, this trunk absolutely hasn't cut corners. I'll tell you what cutting corners is. There are a few particularly common points. The first is the anchor points, the 4 anchor points at the back of the car where you hang hooks. These anchor points that can hold things in place will be omitted. The second is that side nets like this will be omitted. The third is what? The third is that they will make this board very thin, which is also a common practice for some manufacturers of certain systems. But you feel that this SAIC S5 not only has 2 layers of this board, but also made it double-sided, foldable below this tours. A very interesting design. I especially like it, a small cover plate. The last time I saw it for the first time, I was already a bit surprised. My God, only global models would do this, okay? So everyone has actually seen that this place on the back panel is an arc, which means that it has a version with a spare tire. It doesn't matter if it doesn't have one. Most people now don't drive pure electric vehicles for real long distances. What I mean by real long distances are those that exceed 1,000 kilometers across provinces. So even if there are some small problems with your tires, they can be dealt with nearby. It's not a big problem on this basis. We have obtained a perfect trunk space. This is too useful. I personally feel that this kind of trunk can definitely become everyone's daily. Good helper for loading space. Why did I film it this way this time? It's to give everyone a more comprehensive experience. Another small detail in making the car is where. Look at that trunk cover plate. It has reinforcing ribs. Don't think that this place is storage space. It's not storage space. It's reinforcing ribs. Why is that? If there's vibration when it goes across, it will make noise. Another thing is this anti-vibration damping block. There's one on each side. But after this thing is put down, it touches this place, forming an advantage in the gap above. Let's demonstrate it for everyone. Okay, let's assume the door is about to close. Everyone look at this block. It will directly, maybe you can't see it. Maybe you can't see it, it doesn't matter. It will get stuck at this point. How about this then? It won't make a sound. Another point is, what do we mean by effective loading area or safe loading area? The measurement isn't up to here. Measuring up to here isn't the safe loading area. Unless you have a streaming rearview mirror, otherwise the rearview mirror can't see behind. This is a violation of traffic law. So the effective loading area we're talking about, and the upper edge of the safe loading area is from the top of the seat back to the lower edge. So everyone take a look. This is the entire effective loading area of this car, judging by eye. Its average quality is still acceptable. After all, this car isn't big, is it? Then besides that, things like hooks on the side and the lights are all complete for a 100,000 yuan family pure electric SUV. It's really good to be able to get these things. So we've talked about a lot of points just now, including what? Including the overall size, materials, comfort, configuration, and some advantages in ergonomics, including some mature components. So how does this car drive? It should be said that driving this car gives a very familiar feeling. This familiar feeling is definitely not a derogatory term. But a very high compliment. You have to know, when we used to buy cars around 100,000 yuan in the era of gasoline cars, especially economic and practical family cars or sub-products, it was unlikely to give you any driving quality. This point used to be a bit of a luxury. But this car is different. When you drive this car, you'll feel, oh, it drives like this. Overall, it's good, but I think what's more interesting is, although the official has done a lot of promotion about sportness and safe handling, but in reality, this car is still a very comfortable car. If you were to rate the firmness of this car, from 1 to 10, the firmness of this car is at most 4 as for the large screen operating system of this car. I won't go into too much detail. In short, it's relatively easy to use in daily use, and the learning curve is extremely low. Everyone can figure out how to operate it after pressing it a few times, and also it has given 2 home buttons. There's a physical home button here. The menus below are the same as your pad or phone. There's no difference. After saying a bunch of advantages, does this car have any disadvantages? The disadvantage is obvious. It's this design. Not everyone likes this kind of sharp, narrow, daytime running light design. We've said many times that the Chinese people up to now have only entered the surrounding family society for a little over 20 years, so most people's aesthetic requirements are a matter of opinion, but the overall more concentrated aesthetic tastes are thick eyebrows and big eyes. What looks like thick eyebrows and big eyes? Everyone think about it yourselves, okay? Holla.